When I first met my Zen teacher, I wasn't a Buddhist. I was a semi-practicing Catholic. I didn't feel like I belonged. I actually felt dislocated. I felt like my sense of who I was dissolving. When I encountered a Zen Buddhist and they didn't say anything about God, I thought, I need to spend some more time with that person. There's a huge disconnect between science and religion. Science is promoting a particular cosmology, a particular worldview. But we know from science that we're living in what is termed a cosmogenesis. I think we need to combine the storytelling of the religious leaders with the facts of science.
Yeah.
Being present is more than just understanding or seeing the immediacy of our moment. I think that's the source of our pain, is that we're not able to see deep, not just deep space, but deep time.
In the Soto Zen tradition, as I understand it, monks are permitted to marry and raise families. How do you reconcile these aspects of leaving home with your role also as a family member?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. And
Hey, welcome. I am so glad you're here. This is the debut episode of my podcast, Sentient Beings. This has been weeks in the making, months, and I just want to pop on to say thanks for being here. It means the world to me that you're watching this. This podcast is all about making spirituality practical and accessible to the modern audience, to everyday life. And I just find that there isn't a lot of content like that out there. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. Being someone who grew up Buddhist and spiritual all their life, I benefited a lot from it, and I want to share that knowledge with the world. For this first episode, I had the privilege of sitting down with Daishin Eric McCabe. And we had a great conversation. We explored the nature of reality, the intersection of science and religion, and how to discover purpose in our lives. So, moving forward, I hope to bring you more conversations like this with Buddhists, with other spiritual leaders, thinkers, visionaries, as we reimagine what it means to live a deeply meaningful life today. So if you enjoy this, please consider subscribing, liking the video, or if you're listening to this, the audio version, rating and reviewing it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Your support helps me to continue creating content like this that brings comfort, clarity, and inner peace to all. Again, thanks so much for being here. And now let's dive into the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Sentient Beings, which is what I'm calling the episode, I guess, tentative, or not episode, podcast, tentatively.
Nice.
I hope to bring with this podcast, to bring spirituality down to earth.
Great.
And make it more accessible.
Amen.
And if you don't know me, I'm your host, Kara Leo. And today we're honored to have Reverend Daishin Eric McCabe joining us. My family and I have known Daishin for going on, I think, a decade, if not more. He's been teaching here at the Pure Land of Iowa for just as long, and he's been just an integral part of our community and a favorite instructor among our members. Daishin is a seasoned priest in the Soto Zen School of Buddhism. With a bachelor in ecology and world religions. Daishin apprenticed for 15 years under Patricia. Now, see, you need to correct me if I got her name wrong. Patricia Dayan Benaj Roshi.
Benaj
Roshi. Training at Soto Zen monasteries in Japan and with Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh in France. And recognized as an international Zen teacher, he's also trained in the spiritual direction and chaplaincy. Daishin currently teaches at the Nebraska Zen Center and Pure Land of Iowa and offers trauma-sensitive yoga at hospitals and lectures on world religions. Now, this is... I got a lot of this from your website. And so if you want to add anything to it, feel free.
Yeah, there's one thing I'll add. As you're saying this, first of all, as you're saying all of those things that I'm doing, I'm thinking I'm doing way too many things.
I saw you were like solemn all the time. I'm like, am I saying something wrong?
No, I'm just doing too many things. But no, I enjoy the truth is I love doing all of those things. And it's really, as far as lecturing, that word lecturing seems so official. I kind of cringe with that word. But I work at Des Moines Area Community College, so it's and like I was saying earlier, I've been trying more and more to not lecture, more discussion-based stuff as far as the class goes. But yeah, world religions is a lot of fun. And the other thing that I'm doing, I just started this about 4 months ago, is working as a chaplain at Mary Greeley Medical Center part-time, which is in Ames. And that I've been really enjoying that work as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's just like you don't usually see Zen monks or just like Buddhist monks in a chaplain role.
Right. And to be honest with you, I'm incognito in that role because I'm not wearing my robes when I do that.
I see.
Yeah, but I do introduce myself as Daishin. I introduce myself to people as Chaplain Daishin when I do it. And it's funny because people will often ask me, "Oh, what's your denomination?" And they're talking about
I was going to say, did they ask you? Yeah.
They want to know, what's your denomination? Where's your church? And my response...
Zen church.
Right. So depending on the people, I almost never reveal what my religious background is, unless I feel like it would be helpful, because that's not the role of the chaplain. I'm not trying to make people into Buddhists, or tell them what I think they need to hear. It's the reverse. It's rather, how do we open up the conversation so it's geared towards what feeds you spiritually, So it's a different role. I'm not trying to get people to become more faithful to the Buddha or to Jesus, but if that's their practice, if that's what their desire is, then yeah, we can talk about those things too.
Yeah.
And I've had some amazing conversations, but and just in the short time I've had really inspiring conversations, mostly with Christians. But they'll often ask me, like, where's your church? Just getting back to that question.
Right.
And so my
Christians as a chaplain, like the patients or relatives.
The patients or the relatives will ask me, where's your church? And my pat response. And this was a response that was suggested to me by the chaplains that I work with as well. And that is, this is my church. This hospital is my church.
Wow.
And all of the patients here are part of my church.
Wow. That's powerful.
It isn't it? Yeah. It just
it's
breaks
so
down
immediate. It's like, okay, yeah, we're here. I get it. Yeah.
It breaks down those walls. Like, I'm not trying to highlight certain people. Some people don't like that. They want church members to be a certain affinity or
a serious organization. Yeah.
So, but everybody has spiritual needs, whether they are religious or not. We all seek meaning, seek purpose. We want to know why we're here. Here's the thing I think that many of us are struggling with, is a sense of belonging, that we don't feel like we belong where we are.
Yeah.
And traditionally, the religions have provided that sense of belonging in many different ways. But if I may, just talk about when I first met my Zen teacher, I wasn't a Buddhist, and I was practicing. I was a semi-practicing Catholic, and my mother, but my parents are considered Catholic, but my mother is more devotional. My father a little less. He was more like I would say, he would never say it about himself, but for me, when I looked at him and living with him, he was more like agnostic or maybe borderline atheist. He had more science bent. And so that's certainly influenced my mother's side and my father's. Both of those have influenced my own path. So when I first met my Zen teacher, this was in college.
Yeah.
I was 20 years old, and I didn't feel like I belonged at all. I didn't know where I belonged. And I'd been studying theology, I'd been studying philosophy of religion, and I actually felt dislocated. I felt like my sense of who I was dissolving, and my concepts around God were also not holding any weight anymore. They didn't make a lot of sense to me as I was maturing and thinking about religious concepts and things through these classes that I was taking.
Right.
And so I was happy to learn, because I learned just a little bit about Zen Buddhism at that time. And this is no offense to anybody who's Christian or theistic, with a theistic bent. But when I encountered a Zen Buddhist and they didn't say anything about God, I thought, I need to spend some more time with that person, because they seem to be at peace with themselves, and they haven't mentioned anything about God. And so I thought, I want to know how to get there. That's the science angle coming in, the tech. Like, there's got to be a spiritual technology to get to where that guy's at. There's, it's just something bigger than just simply believing. Now, believing is very powerful.
Yeah.
And you can also see that as a sort of technology or method in some ways. So I don't want to discount it.
Yeah.
And the role of faith is very important. But for me at that time, as a 20-year-old, inundated with ideas around science and technology, what really spoke to me was like, there's got to be a method. There's something I can do with my mind in order to make it calm. And Buddhism really kind of filled that space, that void for me at that time.
Yeah.
And so when I first met my teacher, she, again, I was...
If I may just interrupt real quick, I'm curious, what was missing for you from, I believe you said you grew up Catholic or semi-Catholic. What was missing for you in that time in your 20s that made you seek out something else and then ultimately finding Zen Buddhism? Like, what were you searching for?
Well, that's it. I mean, I didn't feel like I could ask questions. I didn't feel like I could explore without being given an answer from the outside, an answer from an authority. I didn't feel like I could explore my own questions about who I am and who I was. And when I brought those same questions up to my teacher, like, who am I? What am I about? Why am I here? She said to me, that's your koan. And she just turned it around at me and affirmed my questioning, my desire to raise the question. Whereas I didn't feel like I could do that and maybe I was wrong, but I didn't feel, at least at that moment, I could do that with the Catholic priests that I had known. I just felt like I was going to get a theologically based response, and
just textbook.
Some kind of a direction that I wasn't looking for. I was looking for like more open-endedness there, as opposed to closed and fixed.
And it's like not personalized or customized to each person. It's probably just like a one-size-fits-all answer, right? Versus I feel like a lot of Zen and Buddhism is just so unique to your individual needs. Right?
Right. Yeah, there is that. There's
or where you are in the level of like enlightenment or like knowledge. Like if you're a beginner, you obviously will get a different answer than if you're very advanced.
Absolutely. And I don't think I think that there is that in the Christian tradition as well.
Okay.
So I don't want to discount it there.
Okay.
If you look for it, you'll find it.
Sure.
I think.
Okay.
I just used, in the Zen way, I used what was at hand. And the folks that were at my hand, this was pre-internet, and I was learning about theology through books mainly. There was no online stuff going. This was 1994. just before the internet kind of exploded. So then this teacher came, a Zen teacher who had been living in Japan for 23 years, was American. And I just fell in love with her, not in the, in the romantic way, but just I was entranced by her practice and her presence.
And this was Patricia Roche.
Right. Yeah. Diane Banaj Roshi.
Okay.
Yeah. And Roshi just means old teacher.
Hmm.
But it's an honorific.
Was she old?
Yeah. Well.
Or she was just very like a senior, like has been in the position.
Exactly.
A while. Okay.
Yeah. She had trained in Zen temples in Japan for 15 years.
Yeah.
And so she came with a certain level of not just authority there, but she had such presence that I had never seen in another person before. Here was somebody that was very accessible. I can talk with her. I could raise questions to her. And so the story that she told when I first met her, and again, I was coming from this place of, do I belong somewhere here? Why am I here? What am I doing? And she told me this story of an American who went to train in Japan at a Zen temple. I don't know if this story actually happened or not, but it's a story of an American that went to train in a Zen temple, and he lived there for about 3 months with the monks. And at the end of his 3-month stay, he approached the head monk and asked the monk, I've been doing this practice with you guys, waking up early, cleaning, cooking, meditating, chanting. I really like the practice. Can you tell me, how do you become a member? How do you become a member of this organization? and the head monk scratched his head on the other side, indicating confusion. Member? How do you become a member? And then he responded, how does a cloud become a member of the sky?
Oh, so he's like already accepted, basically.
Exactly. I mean, we belong not because we've joined something or agree with somebody, but because we are alive. There's no special creed that we have to say, oh, I believe this. If a creed helps you
that made me feel so like misty-eyed. That's so beautiful.
I mean, that land, I felt like I landed home when she shared that story. I was like, oh, okay, it's okay to be me.
Wow. And so, while hearing your story, it just made me like it's interesting because I think perhaps you knew from a young age you were seeking for something greater.
Absolutely.
And I think that's not everybody. Some people are just so content living their normal lives. And I've never been like that. I've always been a seeker. And I wonder if my experience has been similar to yours in that, like, it's just there's this discontent while growing up. Just like there must be something more to this.
Yeah,
like every Disney movie, like, I want to get out of this small town.
Yes.
But like, what was that feeling that made you know or think that I got to get out of here? I got to find this thing. I don't know what it is. You mentioned that, like, okay, I wasn't getting my questions answered, but like, what was the drive behind having those questions in the first place? Because not everyone would even have those questions.
I grapple with that. Why is it that I started asking these questions really young? I grapple with that because I thought when I was going through that, I thought everybody was doing something similar. And it's taken me years to not everybody is desirous of doing this particular, not everybody is a seeker.
Oh, absolutely.
At least not at that age.
Yeah.
That dawned on me way too late. But it dawned on me when done. But your question is why? What drove that? I don't. That's a big.
Or like describing that feeling of like, I don't know. It could be a feeling.
Right. Yeah, I think a discontent is certainly a part of it. There's a piece in the religion of Islam. I think it's in the Quran. I'm not sure, so you have to forgive me if I mistake this. But somewhere like Allah awakens those He desires to awaken. Right? Something like that. Or I don't know if the word awaken is the right language, but
it's like you.
Yeah.
You're ready. You're ready. You're
Right.
not ready. Yeah, you're not.
Yeah, it's like that within the Christianity, Judaism as well, where somehow Moses was awoken to his role, and the Pharaoh was not. And it says there in the Bible, God made the Pharaoh hard-hearted, that he couldn't open up to the suffering that was around him, and it just says God made him that way.
And sorry, the Pharaoh, excuse my ignorance with the Christian kind of theology, but like the Pharaoh was Moses' dad?
Yes and no. He was brought up in that.
Oh wait,
palace.
Moses came in a basket down the river.
Right.
So okay, got
it.
So
he's born. They were killing all of the Jewish babies, and his mom, Moses' mother, puts him as a baby in a basket down a river.
Yes, I remember now.
And Pharaoh's daughter picks him up out of the river and raises him in the palace. So he's got this major privilege.
Got it. I remember watching Joseph, the King of Dreams. That's how I know the story.
Yeah, Joseph, another dreamer.
DreamWorks.
Yes.
That's a great animation. Sorry, go on.
So anyways, it talks about how Pharaoh's heart is made hard by God. And I hate to think that people's hearts are hard. But my teacher would say, everybody's alarm clock goes off at a different time. So you can say, well, somebody up above is deciding who starts to open up their mind to a sense of purpose, sense of meaning. That's one way to think about it. My teacher would say, everybody's alarm clock goes, the causes and conditions for us to come to that place.
Yeah.
From a Buddhist perspective, I mean, from a traditional Buddhist perspective, they were planted, lifetimes ago. Right? It's not just this particular life that we have right now that was happening, but it goes back, maybe 1,000 years we've been practicing or longer. So we're not in control of what other people, their awakening process.
Yeah.
And that's the only way
or
I can.
Or our own, right? In a way.
Or our own, yeah. We're not like, I didn't ask the
beyond
questions,
this path,
but I had the questions, and I thought, and I've just been guided. I've had some really, not just one teacher, but many, many good teachers, and they've guided me. I could not ever have done this without good teachers, Buddhist and non-Buddhist, religious and secular. They have guided me, and I think, the teaching, and that's the heart of Buddhism too. You just can't do the path without a teacher.
Wow. Yeah.
You got to have somebody or somebody's saying, go this way, go that way. So there's the direction that I wasn't open to from a Catholic priest that could have been a teacher.
Yeah.
In some ways, the one that I'm thinking of, he was a teacher in some ways. But
he didn't answer your questions.
But in that particular way, I just wasn't there. So for whatever reason, I was led to my Zen teacher.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, this is something I'm not. Part of it for me is personality too. My family of origin was very talkative, to say the least, and it was always very noisy and loud.
Really?
Yeah, very noisy, and
that's why you wanted to become a Zen monk, is like quiet, please.
Absolutely.
Peace.
I mean, I was attracted to that for sure. That element.
You mentioned you're half Italian or something like
yes,
that?
Yeah, on my mother's side.
So Italians, I know, can be loud.
Can be, yeah. So my family, they were, and on my father's side, Irish was also.
Oh yeah, boisterous.
They're Fighting Irish and stuff, and they would get into, my parents, they loved each other, and they would fight like cats and dogs every day, and it would be over little things. And I don't know. I don't know how other people respond to that kind of stuff, but it was just, yeah, I think there was a longing for, can't we just like say kind things to each other sometimes? And they did. It's not that they didn't,
Oh,
but
I thought they were just being loud, like kind of like rambunctious, but
well,
they were also like saying
I,
mean things in addition to being
sometimes,
loud.
yeah, not always, but it was there was a spirit of constant criticism. I
Oh,
think it was meant for improvement kind
mm,
of thing,
yeah,
but it was just, it began, for me, it was kind of grating to a certain degree. Again,
yeah,
I love my parents. My father just passed away.
yeah. My condolences.
Thank
I
you.
saw, yeah,
Yeah. And I talk to my mother regularly, actually. I call her, or at least every couple of days now.
yeah,
But growing up in that environment, and then to see the contrast with, well, also even within the Catholic Church, again, it's very beautiful, mass and all, but also there's a lot of verbiage, and I was very attracted to a spirituality that said words are important, but there's something underneath the words that, if you can learn to listen what's underneath the words, and sit in the silence. And I thought, wow, it seems so counterintuitive and to be given permission even to sit in silence, even for a short time. It was transformational for me to sit with my teacher. The first time I sat with her, we sat for 15 minutes in silence, and she gave this amazing zazen meditation instruction, how to sit. And she was embodying it to the best of her ability. And then we sat in silence for 15 minutes, holding this particular posture and just following her instructions. And then we had a discussion of a book, and I felt better than I'd ever felt without having done any drugs or drinking as a 20-year-old. And I was getting involved with that stuff, and just my head wasn't clear. And here I stood up, I felt better, and I didn't do anything.
it sounds like it was a kind of acceptance of yourself and being present
Mm.
with yourself, which means accepting yourself as you are.
Mm.
And then perhaps because you grew up in a environment of criticism, it was hard to accept yourself, right? And in addition
Mm.
to having all that noise, like all of a sudden is the opposite of that, no noise, complete acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
you as you are.
Yeah.
I bet that was really like freeing, right?
Oh,
It's almost like
absolutely.
it's love and it's
Yes.
belonging, like we were talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, I think that's what everyone's seeking, right? That kind of peace.
Absolutely. I think so.
And that how beautiful that you can give it to yourself, that you don't have to find someone
Yeah.
else or do something or be something in order to feel that.
Exactly. No. And my relationships with my friends changed after that experience too. I mean, I didn't completely quit doing drugs or drinking, but I
Oh,
started to
okay.
slow down.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
started to slow way down, and I started to prioritize practicing meditation in particular. And I didn't intend on being a priest at all. I had no intention there. But I did want to continue to study religion, spirituality. In fact, I was planning to do a graduate program in a master's of, was it Master of Arts in Religious Education in at a university in California. So I wanted to be a professor, actually, and so I didn't intend to be a priest until I started going into graduate school.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I was in this school that I think it was a good school in many ways, but I was running up against the same like hyper competitiveness that I was trying to, the spirituality, the meditation, meeting my teacher seemed to be pointing me in a completely opposite direction from the hyper competitiveness of getting a degree. I respect, I look at people now and like, wow, you got a master's degree, you got a doctorate degree. And sometimes you got to go through all kinds of hoops, and
Yeah.
the competitive nature of a academic institution is really stressful. That plus I didn't have good language skills outside of English.
Okay.
And I was just
What
it
do you
wasn't the
need
right
outside
fit.
of English in the West, like in America?
Well, for religious studies, you had to have another language.
Really?
Yeah, you had to
Okay.
at first I thought maybe Japanese, but I was only, I didn't, I'd only been in Japan for a year at that time.
Mhm.
And I realized if I wanted to do if I want to do this program, I have to have a language, and I got to devote all my time to studying a language in addition to all this other coursework. And it just seemed impossible.
Yeah.
Nowadays, apparently you don't have to, depending on the institution, the language thing is not as central. But when I was going there, it was really like that's what you had to have in order to complete
Yeah.
your degree,
That's
some
interesting.
proficiency in a language. So I couldn't do it. Maybe I would have if I didn't need that. But in any case, I found another Zen center that was close to the university,
Right.
and it was in the Korean Zen tradition, the Sungsan Sunim tradition, and started.
And where was this in the?
This was in Berkeley, California.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, that's the university I was attending was Graduate Theological Union, so it was a consortium of different of religious institutions that were from all different denominations within Christianity. I went to it was a Jesuit school within there. There was also a Buddhist school, and I never thought to apply to that one, but anyways, I found the Jesuits.
In Berkeley?
This is in Berkeley. Yeah,
They have a Buddhist
oh yeah, it's called the
path.
IBS. What is it?
Oh, I think that's in City of 10,000 Buddhas, is it not?
Well, that's another one. That's
Okay.
another university.
Oh, that's Dharma Realm University.
Dharma Realm.
Yeah.
That's another Buddhist
Yeah,
university.
yeah.
That's in, what is it, LA? Ukiah? Or
Ukiah, yes. Yeah.
But this is IBS, Institute of Buddhist Studies.
Oh, cool.
In Berkeley,
I didn't
California.
know Berkeley had
Yeah,
that.
so you can get a degree. Now, I mean, hindsight is always 20/20. I would have done a lot of things differently when I was that age. But in the moment, I found another Zen teacher, and that was so helpful because I would go there, sit, meditate every morning for 30 minutes, get a short reading, and then go back to my life and try to sort things out. And I found work as I didn't want to be studying stuff. I wanted to be doing something engaged in the world.
Yeah.
I wanted to be connected with people. So, and I like teaching. I enjoy the process of teaching. It's not easy at times, but I really enjoy it. So I thought maybe I could be a school, like a elementary school teacher. So I worked as a substitute teacher for the remainder. I dropped out of the university, the graduate program, and I worked as a substitute.
That's
teacher.
interesting. You went so young. Like initially, you were gonna want to
was
be a
too young.
professor, and then
Yeah.
you drop all the way to like, oh, I think I'll go with younger kids, like very young kids.
I was too young to do it, I think, and I was, my personality is I would get way too focused on the studies, and it was way off balance. I needed to balance
like
it with
very heady, right?
very
Intellectual.
heady and too much reading,
Uh-huh.
and I needed to balance it with service. Who am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? Is this to acquire knowledge? I needed to balance it with service to others. How can I help other people out? I needed to balance it with meditation, to let go of all this wordy stuff and just sit and be, come back to the sense of belonging.
Yeah.
So that was where I was at that time, and still where I am. I still can find myself getting caught. Oh, I really love this meaty intellectual, book or thing, and I get sucked into it. But with my life as it is, it prevents me now. I can't study that hard. I can study, but not that hard. It's in balance with sitting practice. It's in balance with service opportunities. So it's much better. It's much better.
Yeah. So, thinking about the younger audience that might be watching, say like college aged or even high school aged, just like in relation to your experience of, like wanting to find what you're good at,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to make a dent in the world, but then at the same time needing to pay rent, needing to meet societal expectations of maybe a high-paying job, getting married, having a
Right.
good, a nice house, a nice car, all the trappings of the material world. What advice would you give them in terms of pursuing your passions, yet finding that balance between inner and outer?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Well, I was always just really moved by my teacher's example. And I was reading about various religious seekers and spiritual seekers in my college years, that people lived incredibly simply, that they don't, we think we need a lot more than we actually do. My teacher was married to a very wealthy businessman as a young person in her 20s. And she wasn't happy in that particular marriage, and it ended up dissolving. This is just based on, I'm just sharing what I understood her say to me. So you'll have to excuse me if I haven't got it just right. But the sense of what she said about that was that she had access to, or she had been surrounded by tremendous wealth, being married into it, because her family was not wealthy. In fact, just before she married, she was catapulted into wealth because her father, her family went bankrupt. She was in this place where she had to make ends meet, and she didn't have a degree, but she had been studying classical ballet, and she had a minor in French. And so she was trying to find a job with those skills. And
very niche.
And her parents were kind of reluctant to have her major in classical ballet. They're like, you're going to have to eat. Right? And that's the question that we all have.
That's also a very hard discipline. So she must have been very passionate about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She was, she started at age 13, getting lessons and stuff. And she had to get those lessons, her parents wouldn't pay for it. They didn't want her to dance. And they even tried to discourage her from her minister. Talked about wanted to get her not to dance too. But she was so upset about that. She earned money by babysitting, and then that would pay for her fees to get the. And so if you have a will, there's a way.
I love that tenacity.
I think we need to hear that message more and more. If you want something, then you can do it, and don't be discouraged by what the problem is that we listen to too many voices that we really don't need to hear. And it's very easy to do that on social media, etc. And that's
it
why
might make you think that they know better because
Exactly.
they had the experience, or that they're more senior than you, but not necessarily.
Not necessarily. And this is where meditation comes in. Quiet your mind down, focus your mind, and get in touch with your desire. And then we say in Zen mind, beginner's mind. If you have a beginner's mind, if you have an expert's mind, in the expert's mind, there are few possibilities. In the beginner's mind, there are many. Strive to have that beginner's mind. That's what we strive for in our practice. And then when the mind is open, when you have that sense of, like the mind of a little kid, they're curious. So first, become curious about your passions, and then meet people who are doing those things. Connect with those people. Be selective who your friends are and what you listen to and what you study. Study those things that will get you to where you want to go. Not, and you might have to cut off certain relationships for a time being, or maybe for good. I don't know. But if you really want something, and every one of us wants something, every one of us has strong desire for something. I'm convinced we're here for a reason. And when we're out of alignment with that reason, we suffer greatly. So it's really it's not a question of should I follow my passions or not. You absolutely must.
Wow.
If you want to be healthy and happy, you absolutely must. And that doesn't mean you're not going to go through times of difficulty, challenge, maybe not have lots of money, maybe start to question. But, and here's the thing also, doubt is a part of the spiritual path. It's not, we in the West, religion seems to be anathema to doubt, and you have to have faith or trust and that kind of thing.
Complete certainty.
Yeah, you don't. You can let, the Tao Te Ching says the sage is guided by the torch of chaos. Right? I'm not quoting this completely.
I get it.
It's not Tao Te Ching. It's the Zhuang Tzu. The sage is the torch of the sage which lights the way is chaos. So don't be intimidated by the chaos. Don't be intimidated by your own fears and doubts. Get in touch with yourself. Do what you need to do to get in touch with yourself. It might mean you connect with different people. Maybe you change your location. If you're in a bad environment, that doesn't help. I mean, I had to leave my home for a time. Actually, that was my growing up period. Is all right. I'm with my parents here, but they want me to do a certain thing. Here's my unique opportunity. I failed at graduate school. I got this job teaching at an elementary school in Maryland, and it was a Catholic elementary school. This is like a year later after my that failed. I was subbing,
Right.
And then a year later, I found a full-time job teaching, and I completely failed at that too because I wasn't really mature enough, and I wasn't in touch with my. So you can do all these other things, and they might help you to a certain degree, but eventually it has to be at the service of that deeper passion, and or to continue to touch back on what is your deeper passion and find out, like, go in that direction. And for me, I thought, okay, here I am, no job, no, the education I wanted, that fell through. I don't have a life partner that I'm with right now, no kids. I could either go back into the school system and try to do it, or I can go hang out with that teacher that I first met in university. She seemed to say some pretty helpful things, and she wants to start a Zen center. I want to go help her out. And so that's what I did. I had a car from teaching English for a year in Japan, and I got in the car, packed up a suitcase of stuff, and said adios to my parents, whom I love greatly. And I'd visit them regularly.
Yeah.
But it was just 3 hours away.
Okay.
And I hung out with my teacher. And that was the best decision I ever made in my life. It changed. That was also very transformational.
It sounded like you went with a feeling versus like a heady kind of intellectual, okay, let's plot out my life for the next 5 years,
Well,
which
that didn't
rarely
work.
happens.
It didn't work.
Every time. Right, you did try.
I did. I
Yeah.
tried that.
Yeah.
I had my life all plotted out. Like I was going to become a professor and do this, and that.
There were just roadblocks that stopped you, and that's kind of fate, right? Almost. Yeah.
I had plotted everything out, and I was in a complete dead end. That was a dead end. And the thing is that even when I was in the Zen temple training, that same thing creeped back up, plotting out my entire life. So it's not like we have to, I find, and I think others may too, it's not like a one-time thing where you got to let go of this incessant planning. It'll creep up again. And it's not that we shouldn't plan. And my father would say, what did he say? Plans are essential. No, planning is essential. Plans are meaningless. Something like that.
Ah, yes. The act of it is helpful to get you to move towards something, but then you might need to let it go and let things unfold, right?
Exactly. And I came to that same place even while practicing in the Zen Center that, I'm going to be here my whole life. I'm going to do this, this, and this while I'm here. And meanwhile, I got back in touch with that. What is the passion? Where's the desire? Buddhism, talks about desire in a negative light, but I think in this light is this desire to, how would I say, be 100%, not just ourselves, but to live a meaningful life. That's really important. That's an important desire to cultivate and continue to come back to. Yeah. And I found that, I was in a stage there where that was getting diminished by my staying put.
Yeah.
And so I had to let go of that particular or that particular line of thinking and path that I was on in order to, again, get back in touch. What is the passion? We have to do that periodically, I think.
Yeah. So there is a quote on your website I found very interesting. In Zazen, leave your front door and your back door open. Let thoughts come and go. Just don't serve them tea.
Uh-huh.
And that's by Shinryo Suzuki Roshi.
Right.
And to me, this is like the practice of being the observer and not being attached to your thoughts. Kind of the opposite of what a lot of Westerners believe, like you are what you think. And so I find a lot of peace with this kind of practice. I actually try to do this a lot and kind of imagine myself like holding court, as they say, like, okay, some subjects come and present this like, idea to you and you're just like, okay, I'll consider it.
Yeah.
But I'm not that thought. I'm not the subject. I'm the queen. I'm the royal. I have control over what I decide to go with or act upon or think or speak.
Yes. Yes.
Can you speak more to this practice and or this concept and how, like, how to use it?
Oh, that's another really great question. Yeah. How do we deal with thoughts? I mean, that's certainly what drove me to meditation practice as well, is that my mind, I couldn't, like my teacher, the way my teacher described it, we're on a what did she say? A squirrel cage? Or
a squirrel? People encage squirrels?
Like a gerbil, the gerbil wheel?
Hamster.
That's a hamster. Where it's like our mind is like a hamster wheel, and it just keeps going. And you're like, how do I get off the wheel? How do I?
Yes.
Right. That's how the mind is, unless you have a meditation practice or the equivalent.
It's like almost by default. That's what it does.
That's what the mind does. Now, I found also, incidentally, with swimming, that was probably my first competitive swimming was probably my first where I found meditation. I didn't call it that, but swimming practice, getting in the water. It's not an intellectual thing. You can't get smarter about not drowning. You've got to actually learn how to swim, and you've got to use your whole self to do it. That's where I think I first discovered meditation and the ability to let go of thoughts, because you're not focused on what you're thinking. You're focused on your body movement through water, which is very, it's just a wonderful form of meditation.
Moving meditation.
The moving meditation. Yeah. And I still do it today when I can. But unless you have some form of meditation practice, it's going to be really challenging to get off of that hamster wheel. Now, yeah. So if that's where we are with the hamster wheel spinning around, then knowing that we can quiet the mind with guidance, with help, then why not do it? I want to emphasize, though, that thinking and thought is not wrong or bad. The thing we have to be aware of is, like you said, the selectivity. I want to select what I think about. Sometimes meditation works, and sometimes it doesn't work, right? Sometimes you sit down and all you see is this hamster going around on a wheel, and it's not helpful. So we need to know ways and methods to use our minds when we're practicing meditation, and one size doesn't fit all. Being in a relationship with a teacher can be, I've found, really, really helpful when you're in the same physical location as somebody and you're sitting down next to them. It's like an invisible paper shredder for thoughts.
Wow, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
I am so envious. I myself am trying to find a teacher like that. But I think so before I guess I'm not ready, because they said when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? And so for now, I just resort to finding resources online and finding teachers on YouTube, which, it's fine, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, there's many ways, and you must have had that experience to some degree with somebody. And we don't have to have a teacher right? Like my teacher. Actually, I especially in the Zen tradition, in the Soto Zen tradition, it's not a guru relationship. In other forms
okay.
of, and other meditation practices, even within Buddhism, there's this kind of guru type relationship that develops with the teacher. But Soto Zen in particular is not like that. My teacher would remind me of that every so often. And I think that's helpful because we can learn from anybody. Like one of my great uncles said, you can learn something from an idiot.
Yes, and Confucius said, if there's 3 people walking, I can. There's got to be one that's my teacher.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of Confucius, there's I just started picking up this book by one of my college professors on a Japanese Confucian scholar that said something very similar to that. Something like, something about we can learn from anybody, even from people that are espousing things that might seem a little bit strange or weird. You know,
Right.
you can explore that. Check
Quote
it out.
unquote bad.
What's that?
Quote unquote bad.
Yeah. Something that's kind of cutting edge, but may not be traditional. Check it out. You know, you don't know. There might be something there, or there might not be. You
Yeah.
only know if you explore it.
Just being curious and open-minded.
Exactly.
It's that
Yeah.
nature of duality, right? Because we are so used to thinking good and bad, evil, good and evil, like, yeah, good and bad. And it's just like so easy to fall into that black and white thinking
Very easy.
where everything's technically just gray, you know?
Yeah. I was in a really privileged situation where my teacher, I met her at the university, and there wasn't an internet at that time.
And right, you had no choice but
There
to
was
seek out someone.
There was no choice.
Now, when you met her, was it already a student-teacher relationship, or was it just like you're just trying to learn from somebody and she
It
was
was
there?
definitely not a teacher-student relationship. It was just like, I want to learn from this person. I didn't want to be, I didn't see her as my teacher. Nowadays, people like, oh, this is my teacher. Well, I mean, yes and no. You can have teachers, but don't get stuck in one. Every circumstance is different. And it's not this black and white thinking. It doesn't work for us unless you.
It's just lazy thinking.
It's
You don't
lazy, yeah.
categorize, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. Right, exactly.
So why do you think there's a growing lack of interest? Now, okay, this is I should reword it. Why do you think there's a lack of interest in religion and spirituality among the younger generation? And what steps do you think can be taken to engage them more and like foster a deeper connection?
Well, I think that's a question for youth.
Oh, me.
Or for yourself
youth. Okay,
or
yeah.
youth in general. I think
Yeah.
that I'd love to see what they would say on that.
I mean, I'm not young anymore. I'm 30 something.
Right. Sure.
But I understand, like the 20s, 30s, or even younger.
Right. Because when I'm teaching world religions at DMAC at the community college, I'm working with folks that are 17, 18 years old. And this is a question that continually rises for me. Like, what are these folks looking for?
That's interesting. So what have you found? Because you do teach them, and like, are they asking some good questions? Are they what?
Well, that's the thing is they do ask good questions, and they are seeking for something more. I think that's natural. It's human nature to seek out meaning, and many of them, many of our youth have really constricted ideas of what religion is based on their family of upbringing, whether that is that they've been engaged within, say, for example, and this is not to put a negative light on Christianity, but oftentimes that's the religion of one's upbringing, and there's either the stance of embracing it 100% or rejecting it 100%, and neither of those is helpful for any of us. Because oftentimes embracing 100%, we don't look at the positive and the negative sides of what we're practicing and how it affects other people.
And the Buddha specifically emphasized that you should investigate everything I say. Don't take it as it is.
Have a critique. We got to be able to love our religion. If it's Christianity, love it, but also be able to critique certain aspects of it that may actually create suffering. And the other side of it is completely rejecting religion because either, maybe you didn't grow up in a religious household, which is the case for many people.
Yeah.
And so their parents may have rejected it for some reason or just didn't see the relevance, or there's this disconnect, I think, between religion and science. There's a huge disconnect between science and religion. Science says science is promoting a particular cosmology, a particular worldview. And that's very attractive. It draws people. And religion, unless it gets that bigger picture of the world, it is not as attractive. So, in other words, let's see. We're living in a worldview, in the West anyways, where if you take a literal approach to religion, God created the world in 7 days, right? But we know from science that we're living in what is termed a cosmogenesis. The universe itself is evolving, and it has been for 14 billion years. Now, that view is potentially transformative, but the problem is we have scientists not telling the story well. They're explaining it with facts. And so I think we need to combine the storytelling of the religious leaders with the facts of science.
Yeah.
That we live in an evolving universe. This is amazing. It's not just like, oh, we're 14 billion years old, goodbye. It's like we've been...
The wonder of it.
The wonder. I mean, my body comes from the birth of a star, or the explosion of
Oxygen,
a star, supernova.
Carbon, all of it. Hydrogen.
The iron coursing through our blood was formed in a supernova. That is a profound. I mean, you can meditate on that. Actually,
it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. How interconnected we are to literally everything.
So science has like these profound meditations, if you can see them in that way. Like I said, we can meditate on the blood in our veins that have been through a supernova. Now, if that doesn't get you to use your willpower, I don't know what will. All of us were through a supernova explosion. We can deal with whatever suffering comes our way.
Ah, wow. Right? Yeah.
So, focus, this body is capable of that. And the evolution that took place on this planet, it's like human beings have only been around for, some say between 200,000 and 300,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
But the planet's life has been around, it's been around for 4.4 billion years. So we just got started, and we're not, and here's the thing that's captivated my imagination since I started on this path, coming from the writings of Teilhard de Chardin, where he says that what's happening is the universe is waking up to itself through the human being.
Oh, yes.
The consciousness is being born. The consciousness, it's not our consciousness, the universe is waking up to itself through human beings. We are now capable of being conscious of our own evolution. We're able to. We're the universe seeing ourselves.
So it's like a projection. I mean, I also think of it this way, like we're like multi-dimensional beings, but then we're in a 3-dimensional body, but we're so much more than our material body.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that view, that's a deep time view.
Yeah.
That it's not directly. It isn't in Buddhism, because Zen Master Dogen and other masters, they didn't know about cosmogenesis, that we evolved from, say, apes, that we evolved from fish, that we evolved from plants.
Yeah.
They would say we're interconnected with them,
but
they don't say that we evolved. That evolution is a modern concept, and we're still getting our minds wrapped around the power of that.
And it's a very controversial topic.
Well, in the United States, not everywhere.
Oh, I thought just Christianity in general? No, because it kind of contradicts creation.
Right. Well, it depends on the Christian, because there are Christians that embrace evolution.
Oh, really?
Yeah. See,
But
that's
how
the
does
thing.
that work with the Bible's
But
stories?
okay,
maybe that's
I
another
can
tangent.
say there are Christians that embrace the whole idea of evolution. And if you look for them, you will find them. Absolutely.
If you look for
But that's
anything,
the
you'll
problem.
find anything.
I think this is the finger on the button here. The problem is that we have certain religious leaders that are not bringing out the miracle of creation. Right? If creation is left to 7 days and it's taken literally, and everything the Bible says is literal truth, well, we're confining ourselves to a very small view. And the human mind is capable of seeing much deeper than that. And in the Soto tradition, Zen Master Dogen, the way he says it, this idea of the universe waking up to itself through the human, he says it like this: that you go forward and experience myriad things is delusion. That the myriad things come forth and realize themselves is awakening.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot of letting go of the self.
The self,
Yeah.
yes. So this particular teaching of Dogen, I think, is very compatible with modern science, helping us let go of this strong identification with a self, and to see that it's not me that's doing anything. I mean, yeah, I'm a participant, but it's only thanks to the entire universe working through me from the very beginnings till right now.
Like
all
the
that
self
stuff.
doesn't end past our skin. Like,
Exactly.
it's just we're all in it.
Yeah. And my grandfather teacher, my teacher's teacher, Japanese, Noda Daito Roshi, I remember him saying this, really struck home. Or he said, one of the things he said, first of all, was that for Buddhists, we have to include the discoveries of science in the Dharma. The discoveries of science should be a part of the Dharma. And the second thing he said is that really, really helped me a lot was he was talking about what in Zen we call the repentance verse, where you affirm all of your past harmful karma. All my past and harmful karma, born from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. I fully accept that. And it's a verse to help us to remember our faults, but not in a like, I'm such a bad person kind of way, mea culpa type thing. It's rather that, hey, we're human beings and we make mistakes, and we need to remember that, because that's the impetus to want us to do better and to help other people. We got to acknowledge we've done stuff that is stupid. But he takes a different take with it. He said, you have to, when it says all my ancient twisted karma from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, he said, it's not enough to go back to your family of origin, your parents. Because the karma, that ancient twisted karma is also in our parents. He said, but you can't go back. It's not enough just to go to them. You have to also, it's not enough just to go back to your great-grandparents or your great-great-great-grandparents. You got to go all the way back to the beginning of time, to the Big Bang.
Oh, even before that? Yeah.
So they're all the way back to the Big Bang. That's where our karma begins.
Well, okay, gotcha. Okay, so this is going to go deep here, but maybe this is a good discussion for those who want to kind of like want the deeper dive. How I understood karma is it's buried in your unconscious. And it's like a seed waiting to sprout under the right conditions. So it's already all there. But if you don't have the right conditions, it won't sprout. So you come into this life already having all these things waiting to like happen. And so I don't know how that kind of aligns with what you were
Totally
talking about.
compatible.
Okay.
Totally compatible. Because that is the view of the storehouse consciousness,
Storehouse,
right?
yes.
We all have this storehouse with all the seeds in the universe. This makes total sense to me.
Okay.
It
All
makes
the seeds in the universe.
all the seeds are in there, and it just
But
depends
everyone is so different.
right. So some are more developed than others right at birth.
You're
Right.
right. And then you were talking about how some of us are more awakened and wanting to find answers than
Right.
others.
Right.
It's like you have probably cultivated that in many
Before
past
that.
lives. Yeah.
So Buddhism talks about previous lives, and
Prodigies make sense, and
right,
like,
yeah, exactly. A child prodigy. How do they get that?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Buddhism explains that all right, previous lives, but even if you don't believe in previous lives, that's a hard concept for a lot of Westerners, I think, to get behind.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right, but we
Yeah.
can get behind DNA. DNA is, and here's where it hasn't been.
But it has like they can see it, can they not? Like under a microscope.
Yeah, you can see this DNA. I mean, that's what gets carried from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
So who you are is the compilation of the DNA of your parents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, and all the way. And that goes all the way back there. The DNA is the result of that, your present manifestation of DNA. So we're not separate from what our parents have done. We're living out their karma.
Oh, in that very scientific way, that makes sense. But that also, okay, it feels like it demystified it a little bit, and it maybe made it not as magical and have this like veil of mystery to it.
I think this is the problem of the way that we talk about
science. But that
science.
could be one of the explanations for sure. Is it the explanation? I don't know.
No. There's absolutely needs to be room for multiple explanations.
Gotcha.
I'm just
but
saying.
That makes sense the way that you put it. Like, okay, yeah, that sequence has been built into you, and therefore you have that.
Yeah.
But then you have your own too. Karma.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's actually, there's that individual karma, but it's not divorced from our parents and their parents and their parents and all the way back. Now, this is not to dismiss ideas of reincarnation if that's where people, if that's where people are. I think that's fine. I don't have any problems with believing in reincarnation. I think in fact, it's not even a belief.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You think about an Indian culture where the idea of reincarnation is most strong, people just take it for granted. That's what we're here the way we are because of previous lives. And it's a
Hindu
good explanation.
Culture, right? Is it Hindu culture?
Hindu culture, right. Yeah. The Buddha just picked up on that.
Right.
He's a Hindu.
Yes.
Right. He picked up on that's the way of explaining. We talk about the Buddha's previous lives.
Yeah. So
that certainly can be an effective way for some people, I think, to talk about our past karma.
Yeah. I think speaking of which, I think this is a good segue. In your meditation, there's a little micro meditation, which you guys should check it out. It's on like podcast platforms. I think you can get it.
Oh, goodness.
One of them is titled, "You Are Perfect Just As You Are."
Uh-huh.
And you emphasize that we're already whole and perfect, but we should still allow space for personal growth. So kind of relating that to karma, there are things that makes us seem imperfect, or that there are things that we must strive to overcome in this life as maybe like an assignment of some kind. But like, how can we reconcile this apparent contradiction between recognizing our inherent Buddha, whole, pure nature, and then the ongoing process of self-improvement and wanting to get enlightenment?
Yeah,
how can you hold those two in the same space?
paradox is the nature of our minds. That's the real nature of our minds. Again, we want to go to black and white thinking.
Ah, that's right.
We
Yeah.
want to black and white. It's either this way or that way. I'm either perfect as I am, or I've got to improve. And usually we fall in one of those. Like if you're super arrogant, yeah, you think you're perfect as you are. If you think there's only that you're not perfect as you are, but there's only room for improvement, then you just keep beating yourself up. And neither of those by themselves is helpful. We're capable of holding both. And we do that. We learn to do that in For me, that's part of meditation. Like, can we hold both of those together in the same, without trying to come down on one side or the other? How does a seed become a tree? It's holding everything in that seed. That seed holds the entire tree inside of it. There's multiple branches. And the same for us, the human mind is no different from that. We're much bigger than just this individual self.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know there's no answer in that that we should just hold them both. But I think like how do we actually go about our daily lives thinking about ourselves when I guess technically there is no self, that it's just really hard to center. Right?
Yeah.
It's almost like it's very comforting to have an idea or a concept to hold on to.
Yes.
And that may be perhaps weakness in some way. I know that's like a negative term, but like that, or laziness, that how do you actually find that peace?
I appreciate your persistence with this question. I do.
Oh, I'm not. Oh, okay. Well,
No, I think it's good.
I hope I'm not beating a dead horse.
No.
Like,
I think it's
just for
important.
me personally. I find it like comforting to have a visualization of something, or like, like, oh, I am already whole and perfect, like that, that brings me peace in some circumstances. Or like, okay, yeah, no, I have room for improvement. Like the acknowledgement of that sometimes brings peace. It's almost like either or in different circumstances, but I've never been able to picture like both at the same time.
Yeah. Well, one image. Have you seen that image of the old lady, the hag, and the young woman?
Yes.
Right. That you can't see them both simultaneously. I think that image is really helpful for modern times. Because there's the if you look at it a certain way, you got the old lady, with her big nose.
Yeah.
You look at the other way, it's the you
big
see this chin.
Yeah, with the little head.
Yeah, exactly.
Scarf,
And then she's turned her head, right? So, but you can't see them both simultaneously.
Yeah, and then you can switch between the two.
You can switch between the two, and they're both there. They're both there, but only one comes forward.
Okay, so you can't really hold both at the same time.
Well, in some cases, yeah, I think
you might go cross-eyed, like.
Yeah, you gotta. I think that could be a helpful image to get in mind. Yeah, we are perfect as we are, and there's room for improvement.
Okay. That makes better sense now.
That particular image.
Yeah,
maybe.
Because I almost like feel pressured to hold both in the same.
Yeah,
thought.
And I'm trying to think in my own case, I do struggle with that as well. Because what happens to me if I just practice with, I'm perfect as I am, sometimes I really need to hear that.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm overdoing it.
Yes.
And so I really need to just be nourished by I'm totally fine as I am.
Exactly. That's like the more compassionate approach.
Yes, that's the compassionate side, and be with that. And I actually, just to be a little bit critical of Zen teachers, the person who Suzuki Shinryu Roshi would say, you're perfect just as you are, and there's plenty of room for improvement. And then other teachers have said the same thing after him. But, my problem, I guess my critique of that is that oftentimes we say the second thing too quickly. We're perfect as you are. Let's just sit with that for a little while.
But there's a but coming.
Yeah, there's a but, right? Forget the but for now. Just, we're perfect as we are, and just sit with that, especially when we're overdoing it, when we think we're not enough. Just sit with that. And then, but then watch for complacency. right? And then when there's complacency that starts to crop up,
Yeah.
there's plenty of room for improvement. We're blind. We have a blind. All of us are blind-sighted to some degree, and those that we live with will eventually point out our blind sites, right? That's or our teachers. That's their
Or the
for.
universe,
The
the
universe
circumstances.
will point out our blind spots for us. Eventually, and sometimes it comes at times when we're not ready to hear it,
Yeah.
right? And when we're feeling like I already feel like I'm not enough, and now you're telling me I got to do more, right? So it could be, but we're not always in control of that. So that's why we got to have those two pieces together. I'm perfect just as I am, and really feel that, and just sit with it. And maybe what somebody else says, you got to ignore it for a while. Maybe what the
Yeah.
universe says, you got to ignore it. Yeah, okay, it's true. Okay, fine. Let's just put that aside for the time being. I'm gonna just focus on being okay as I am. And then once you get that courage and that confidence mustered, then you can start looking at where you can improve your life in some ways.
So speaking of holding both growth and kind of acceptance of who you are, traditionally, like in the quest for enlightenment, some Buddhist paths emphasize renunciation and celibacy. And so in the story of Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, he decided to leave his family, the palace life, and he had a young son, he had a wife and everything. However, in the Soto Zen tradition, as I understand it, monks are permitted to marry and raise families. And so given your own experience of balancing like family life with your spiritual practice, could you share like how being a husband and a parent has influenced your journey, and kind of how do you reconcile these aspects of leaving home with your role also as a family member?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. And because honestly, I was celibate for the 15 years that I trained with my teacher. And initially when I did that, I thought, I can do this for a period of time. And, because I was brought up Catholic, and I knew if I was a priest in the Catholic tradition, absolutely you have to be celibate. But that's one of the advantages within Soto Zen, is that you could possibly marry if you wanted to. And that has a whole tradition not tradition, but a history to it that goes back at least to the 13th century in Japan. It's just the way that Buddhism evolved, where initially monks were celibate as well. And then there was a shift there. So I was very interested in that particular lifestyle for a long time. And then for me, anyways, it became apparent that was no longer going to work. And so being a husband has fulfilled me, and a father has, I don't want to say completed me, but again, we have so many blind spots. And my partner, she shines the light on my own practice. I don't always like it. Sometimes I like it. Sometimes I don't like it. Right. And it's like, oh, I'm not aware of this and this and that. Okay. I've got to, or, my son, I'm in touch with his own suffering and his issues,
Yeah.
how he suffers, even as a 7-year-old. You get in touch with him, trying to find his way through the world. That all informs my practice.
Wow. Yeah, in a much deeper, more personal way. Even.
It's it becomes much more personal. Like I definitely don't want any suffering to happen to this little being, and yet it's out of my hand. And I mean, there's certainly, as a father, I've got to do what I need to do for him, but there's a certain place where I can't make him be happy.
Yeah.
I can do what I can to help him feel happiness, but I'm not in charge of that. He ultimately has to figure his own way through that.
It's kind of what we were talking about, of like, he is perfect as he is, but then you also want to encourage growth, and then holding that kind of for him, right?
Exactly. And so I'm learning, sometimes I'm pushing him too hard, right? That's often my problem.
Okay.
Pushing too hard. And I'm like, all right, let's let up, let them
You need to
have
meditate
fun.
for 1 more hour. Is that what you say to him?
No, and that's the other thing is that we don't push any kind of,
Yeah.
we say prayers
Oh, okay.
at meal times.
Yeah.
And like we just went to a temple, a Zen temple in Vermont this past week for a kids program
Yeah.
that he was a part of. But we don't try to push this on him. He just being in the atmosphere, he sees his parents wearing Buddhist garb and stuff and bowing to Buddhas, and that's sending a message as far
Oh,
as
yeah.
what we think and what we practice. And sometimes we'll have him light the candle and bow with us.
He will gain such great virtues from doing that alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What a
Yeah.
great thing that you guys have instilled, or like just like he's gotten from you guys just from observing you.
Yeah.
You were saying like how is when you were finding someone to, a teacher or someone to like, ask questions, you're not only looking for their credentials, you're also looking at their, you said body language, like something,
Yes.
the nonverbals.
The nonverbal.
And I think kids pick up on that so quickly.
Yeah.
The energy, the tone, the mood, like they're so intuitive, when they're younger.
Totally. Yeah, and having kids I feel like it keeps me in touch with reality in a way that it wouldn't have otherwise if I had, remained celibate.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful and hard. I really feel a compassion when I'm like, we have a 4-month-old now, and my partner will feed her, breastfeed her, and then she has to get back to work, and then I'll hold her, and she's so soft, like to hold a baby that young, and she just melts into you.
Yeah.
There's no better. I mean, yeah, that's a really priceless gift, and it's for a short time.
Yeah.
Because she'll grow out of that within maybe a year or 2 or 3, but it's a short time for the bigger picture. That's priceless and precious.
Yeah.
No, I don't think everybody needs to have children.
Okay.
I don't think everybody needs to have children, but to experience that anyways. But I'm really grateful that I'm in that position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. What do you think Zen masters would react to the concept of the internet? Like, like how should we think about the internet in a way that can help us be more in touch with ourselves? All the things that we talked about, considering, say, if you're talking to like someone who is maybe like 16, 17 years old now, who lives online, like what can we do to be less I don't know, comparing with one another, or like trying to get attention, likes and follows. Like what can we do to get at the root of like this obsession for like attention?
Yeah, that's great. Well, first of all, know that the internet is a tool like any other tool, and it's extraordinarily dangerous. You can get cut by it. It's like a two-edged sword. One edge of it will help you, the other edge will hurt you. And we got to know when we're on the internet, it can go either way. It can really cut us. It can really hurt us. It doesn't hurt us physically. That's where it's, kind of strange now, but it certainly can leave scars on our spiritual heart. So we got to be aware that it's a very dangerous tool, and it can be used for great good too. I mean, obviously, this is one of the uses of it. So I would not be a proponent of completely abstaining from social media, although I think it can be very helpful to detox ourselves from it from time to time. Take like a 1-day media fast where you're not on it at all, and just watch your mind. Watch what happens. This is a great opportunity to people spend so much time on the internet, on social media. They can be doing a million other things with that time, and find out like how much more time you have to fulfill what's your passion, and are you coming back to that question of what is your passion? What are you doing towards that?
Yeah.
And you can unleash your energy by abstaining from social media if you have a real issue with being on it for several hours a day. Those are hours that you can be devoting to your mission in life.
Yeah, and I think just as like someone who is very young, who is still in the school system, who is perhaps uh have a lot of societal obligations to do well in school, to just do what they're told, I think feel a lot of pressure and need to escape reality, right? That they're not perhaps not completely happy and can't yet pursue their passion just, because they don't have that freedom yet. That it makes sense that they want to escape through like video games, social media, movies, TV shows. And it's kind of sad because you're right. If you find something that makes you feel so alive that you don't need social media, like, yeah, do that. But then what happens if you have no control over your current circumstances?
Right. And I've been sucked into, I honestly, to just be honest, I didn't watch movies for 15 years that I was in training. I mean, yeah, maybe once every 3 months we'd watch a Buddhist movie.
Oh, yeah. See, there's good movies too. Yeah.
And then when I left the temple and kind of came to Iowa, I discovered something called Netflix. And I started watching movies because I had abstained from watching movies forever. And now, oh my gosh, there's this movie. I'm just going to watch this one. And then you get hooked into a series. And like, what happens at the end of this one? And you got to go to the next one.
Yeah.
And I've gotten pulled down that road myself. And I'm lucky that I have a practice that I can say, okay, I know there's much more to my life than getting caught up in. At the same time, there's some part of us that needs entertainment and wants to enjoy life to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Where we're relaxing.
So that's okay? Like
absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, we need that kind of. I think entertainment can be helpful at times, especially if we're too focused, too strident in whatever it is we're doing. We gotta enjoy, relax, watch a movie, eat a bowl of ice cream. The problem comes when we shame ourselves. We start to shame ourselves for doing things that it can very well lead into or turn into an addictive pattern very easily.
It's like what the Buddha said with not the Buddha, but like he met a sitar player or like whatever, that like the string shouldn't be too tight or too loose to make the best melody. So I guess because we're material beings in a 3D world, we still need to relax. We need to sleep. We can't run all the time. We can't just like, go all the time, right? It's like a balance.
There it is again, balance. Like I said, I when I was in college, got too focused, especially, in graduate school, too focused on one thing. And that's not healthy either. No matter how much you think it's connected with your passion, you got to just find ways to let go of that. Now, this is what I'll say here is maybe criticized by other schools of Buddhism. And as I mentioned, I was getting into drinking and all when I was in college. And there is alcoholism in my own family too. So it's an issue. So what I'm going to say here might sound counter to Buddhism, but and this is more in Japanese society than it is in Western Buddhist society, but in Japanese temples, before a 1 week sesshin, which means like an intensive meditation retreat where all you're doing for a good chunk of the day is meditating and looking at a blank wall. Before that, one of the several of the temples that I went to, what we would do? Have a couple of beers or shots of sake.
No. Wait, are they ordained or?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why I said this might come as shocking or surprise to other schools of Buddhism.
But I get it.
But one of my colleagues said it's an important part of the practice. It's part of being able to relax, to loosen up. And I don't drink now at all because I don't really enjoy it. In fact, when I was in Japan and they'd pull out the sake or the beer, I was like, I just really don't want to have this.
Yeah.
And even today, I don't, I might have a beer once every couple of months, if that. I don't really enjoy
Yeah.
it. But in that particular social or societal context, I also recognize that there's a place for it. There's a place for alcohol. It's just that we have to be very, very, again, it's another two-edged sword. It can hurt us or it can help us.
Yeah.
There's a clear prohibition against drinking alcohol
Mm-hmm.
in the precepts. So we want to take that very seriously. And at the same time, it's impossible to keep some of these precepts
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Right.
And you can get off on a different path if you're too strict or too tight.
Yep.
My teacher would criticize me and tell me that I was the great abstainer. And she
That's
was pointing,
a compliment almost.
She was pointing out that, loosen up a little bit and don't be too strict or too tight with yourself. Sometimes we can go down that road and it just becomes very narrow. But we can take things to extremes in either way.
Okay, rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Okay, I better sit up.
Favorite way to de-stress after a long day? Rapid fire.
Oh, goodness. Go for a swim. Go for a swim.
Go for a swim. Sorry. Okay,
Yeah,
heard it.
go for a swim.
Favorite dish to cook?
Peanut butter tofu.
I got to follow up on that another time. Last book that you read?
The last one that I read completely?
Whatever, however you want to interpret it.
Right now, I'm enjoying the phenomenon of, the human phenomenon. The human phenomenon by Teilhard de Chardin.
Last thing that made you laugh?
Last thing that made me laugh? I don't know. There were some moments in this conversation, but I can't remember them now.
I know they were like, no.
There it is.
In the moment. Last thing that made you cry?
Oh, yeah. Talking about Avalokiteshvara here in this conversation too. I felt like,
oh,
yeah.
Cats or dogs?
Cats or dogs? Do I prefer one or the other? Oh, I don't have a preference there.
Okay.
I took care of a cat to its end of its life when I was at the temple in Pennsylvania. I even witnessed
a
it
temple cat.
Yeah, a temple
That's
cat.
Adorable.
Yeah, but I've also been with temple dogs too. So, some people are cat people, some are dog people. I don't have that. I like cats. I like dogs.
Yeah, you don't identify your personality based on a kind of animal you
like. Not with cats. But frogs.
That's getting eaten?
No, definitely not.
Got it. Frog person.
I'm
neither
a frog
cats
person.
or dogs. What is your guilty pleasure?
I guess probably watching something on Netflix.
Yeah. Nice. You still watch things on Netflix.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For entertainment.
You know what? I like Superman movies. Not Superman, but superhero movies.
Marvel
is
Marvel
great.
or DC?
Star Wars. I like The Flash.
Yeah. So Marvel or DC? That is the question.
Marvel or DC? I don't know what the difference is there.
DC is Batman and Superman, all the Spider-Man, and then Marvel is like Iron Man, Black Widow.
I don't care.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. I just want to see, sometimes I want to see a superhero winning the day and beating the bad guy.
Yeah.
Real black and white kind of thinking.
Yeah. For entertainment purposes.
I want to that's the bad guy and that's the good guy, and it just makes everything makes sense. It's much clearer. You know what to do.
If only evil can be consolidated
right,
to a
exactly.
person, right? And not in our mind.
We know it's so much more complex than that in Buddhism and in life, but it's nice to be watching a movie where it's really clear and simple. There's a bad guy and there's a good guy, and the bad guy gets your butt kicked.
Absolutely. I agree. Which Harry Potter house are you?
Oh, I love Harry Potter, by the way.
If you know, okay, I was afraid you don't know this.
I read all the books.
Okay, then you must know which house you are.
Yeah. So, Yeah, probably Harry's house, which is the
Gryffindor?
Gryffindor.
Are
Is
you sure you
definitely.
read it?
I like Gryffindor. Then there's Ravenclaw. Definitely not Slytherin.
Okay.
Ravenclaw is
Very smart, intellectual,
okay, and then
knowledge.
was the other one
Hufflepuff is
Hufflepuff?
very pious.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I like Gryffindor. I think
Yeah. Brave. Very brave.
brave. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. I am a mix of Gryffindor and Slytherin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very
Okay.
weird, but like actually
Like
makes
Harry
sense.
Potter.
Like exactly like Harry. Yes. Okay, so is there anything that you want to promote before we go?
Yes. So we are for Zen Fields, the organization the Zen organization in Ames, and we also connect with you guys here at Pure Land. We are presently doing a fundraiser for Haitian students. One is in France right now. There's another student we're helping who's going to a trade school in Haiti. And it's not a lot of money for our standards, for American standards, for them to go to school. In fact, the guy in France, he's on a full scholarship, and we're just paying for his room and board. And the person in Haiti, the school fees, again, it's not a lot of money that they need for American standards, but anything anybody can offer goes a long way for Haitians. 100% of funds go to them. It's not like a middle person in there,
Yeah.
which is great. Thanks to my wife's organization that we can do that.
Great.
So that's what we're trying to support right now.
Perfect. I will put the link in the description and I'll get that
great.
from you later.
Yeah.
And so one last question. This might be, you might need to think on this a little bit, or maybe you have it ready to go. What is your 6-word memoir of your life? So an example came from Hemingway, who, he dared everybody like, oh, I bet you can't write a memoir of your life in 6 words. And then he did by saying, for sale, baby shoes never worn. And so it's just like you can paint a picture with so little words, and then it makes people curious. So like, what if you can put your life into 6 words, your life so far?
Wow. Oh my goodness. 2 rivers swimming. That's 3. 2 rivers. 2 rivers swimming. Surface depth. Universe.
Oh, did you just say a bunch of words?
No, I was just trying to think of images.
Oh, I see. Oh, see, that works too. You can put comma, 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 right?
Yeah, 2 rivers.
Comma, swimming, comma.
Swimming, yeah. So entering, the sense of entering, the swimming means like the action, right? Moving, and in 2 rivers. And those 2 rivers, I'm not exactly what they stand for. I don't know exactly what those 2 rivers symbolize, but I feel like there's 2 rivers. I don't know why.
Oh.
And on the surface, as well as underneath. And then the last one is the universe. I mean, that to me is the context in which we live.
2 rivers swimming. Did you say depth?
Yeah, surface, depth.
Surface, depth.
Universe.
Oh, I see. Yes, you're saying there's surface and depth to the river.
Right, and you can swim on the surface as well as go down deep. You can do like underwater diving.
And that is the essence of the universe?
I don't know.
Or just like universe, yay.
Yeah, universe. Yeah, I feel like that's yay.
Yay. Well, Daishin,
you put me on the spot there, so I did the best I could.
Look, that's perfect. That's so deep. Surprisingly deep.
I just say what anyways.
Perfect. You did. You killed that. Daishin, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Kara.
Truly enjoyed being able to selfishly ask you the questions that I've been wanting to ask you.
Thank you. I'm as we were doing this interview, I feel like I should have been asking you more questions because you got a lot of wisdom right here to share with others. So maybe in another
another episode. Yeah. So we have some questions submitted by our viewers.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's
And
hear
some of your fans, I would say.
Man.
Josh asks, how do the teachings on compassion in Zen Buddhism and Christianity overlap?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. Yeah, how does compassion overlap in Christianity? And well, to me, in Christianity, it's so much more obvious in some ways.
Like how Jesus was just like accepted everybody, right? Died
yes,
on the cross.
that exactly that like
Okay.
the ultimate sacrifice out of love for humanity.
Yeah.
Out of love for all of creation, really. That's ultimate love, and Christians openly speak about love, and they prioritize that. And I think that's very important. And in my experience with Buddhism, it's less so. Not that it's not not that it's absent, but the language is different. I don't know. What's been your experience? I'm curious.
Because there isn't that visceral story of the Buddha, say, getting crucified, that I think it's not as in your face about it, that making you feel guilty about it. But like, I feel a lot of love, but then interestingly from particular bodhisattvas and concepts that they represent. For example, the Great Compassion Bodhisattva. I don't know if you know this, but like my mom, when she was giving birth to me, she faced some complications, and they saw that her umbilical cord had wrapped around my neck.
Wow.
And they were scared that I wasn't, because they couldn't hear my heartbeat in her womb, that I might not make it.
Wow.
So she started chanting Guanyin, or Great Compassion Bodhisattva's name. And she has been for a while during, before that, but it's during that she started chanting, and she said in her mind, if my child can be birthed without and she is healthy, then I will become a vegetarian.
Wow.
Because by that time, even though she was a Buddhist, she wasn't vegetarian. And so I was born, and everything was great. And everyone became vegetarian from that point on, my whole family.
What a story.